Welcome to Live on Lockdown once again as we bring you more information. And this time it's much more focused on the new processes and everything that's been put in place, because this is the episode where we celebrate everything that's happened behind the scenes to bring us out of the lockdown as far as motorsport racing goes. And Carl Enslin is going to be here joining us once again. We chatted to Carl in the early days of lockdown about his team and his riders. Now we're talking to him on the platform of going racing once again with the focus on the national off-roads and the national enduros. So Carl, thank you for joining us once again. It's great to have you here, and I can't wait for this, what is coming now, because we are officially going racing. It's been a hell of a journey, and there's been so much work happening behind the scenes just to get to this point.
Yeah, hey Matt, thanks for having me again on the show. Thank you to everything that you guys are doing as Hollywood and LiveX, keeping us updated through lockdown and keeping everyone's spirits up. And thank you for hosting this to explain to everyone what's happening and how we're going to go back racing to the Nationals.
I think we need to recognize, and I have been really trying to tell people, you know, when that first circular came out saying the government said that we could go racing, it was all getting pushed from Motorsport South Africa. So I've said from my side a big thank you for Motorsport South Africa. And I think on this platform, we just need to recognize that as well. There's been so much happening behind the scenes. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, to Vic and Common and everyone at MSA, they've been on this constantly, meetings after meetings and submissions of all sorts of different documents and paperwork, and they finally got it across the line. So a big thank you to them.
I mean, we've already seen a couple of events rolling out. Not all MSA events, a couple of the WAMSA events, but we saw great numbers at the Motocross this weekend just gone, and that was something like 192 entries at the inlands.
Yeah.
The low felt guys showed that Enduro is back on the page as well. So it's really exciting times, and for you and me, we live in the world of off-road and pinning it. So super exciting, because 2 weeks time we go GXCC racing. And then straight after that, we go and reboot the national championship, which was always a tight championship. And it's become even more nail biting for the enduro and the off-road guys. So it's tough to know where to start. And you and I were kind of like saying to each other, like, this is going to be a more informative show to discuss with people how we're going racing once again. And obviously you're part of a focus group that's been very involved in the nitty-gritty bits and bobs. So I suppose it's a broad question, Carl, but how are we going racing again?
Yeah, so look, I think everyone's concerned obviously with time frames, and you know, is there a championship, isn't there, are we going to get enough racing in the short time? But you know, the fact of the matter is that most events from a national perspective can hold their same dates. We had to throw in one on the enduro side, which wasn't on the calendar, but from cross country, it's exactly the same dates. It's the 12th of September and the 17th and 18th of October. So nothing will really change from that perspective. There's still a championship. It's still 4 rounds, except there's one venue that has been dropped. So there's no need to be concerned on that front. And from the enduro point of view, we've already had 2 in Lesotho and PE. So there'll be another 2 of those that'll make up that championship. So it's all steam ahead at this point.
Yeah, it's actually no drama, really, isn't it? When I actually reviewed the dates, I went, this actually hasn't really caused us too much of a problem. It was a very spaced out calendar. You guys have given yourself a lot of space. And the whole idea behind that was with that Super Series initiative that you were trying to actually get going in 2020, that guys could still go and race their regional off-roads, regional enduros, club races, loads of stuff, and still crowbar in a national championship series.
Yeah, so I mean, from the Super Series point of view, it was always a year that was going to be a bit of trial and error. It still is on the cards, it still is happening, so we do encourage people to cross-ride. Obviously now more than ever, we need the numbers to make nationals work in both disciplines. And we're still keeping all the club classes, regional classes that you can race at a national. So, you know, we still are encouraging everyone to enter and race. From that point of view, nothing's really changed.
It's good news as well, because historically, you know, we always want to hold a club then a regional, then a national. So it seems to have taken a long time, but I know that MSA and GXCC have been working tirelessly behind the scenes. They got their green light, but it's now been, like you say, pushed over the line. The entries got opened a couple of days ago for the GXCC guys. So we're going to see a ton of national guys out in 2 weeks' time. And then pretty much straight after that, they're going to go racing. It's going to be Gauteng based. So we're expecting a lot of the KZN guys to come up for the GXCCs, stay up here for a week, and then carry on. And I suppose it's a good time for you to tell us exactly where we're going racing, because it is on the national off-road calendar, a brand new venue as far as that goes. A lot of guys train out there the first time we've gone racing.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. Ian Pepper, who's been driving this whole thing, as I said in my interview back in April, I think it was with you. He's managed to make a deal there with Rhino Park, and we're very excited to go racing there. I mean, from a pit perspective, from hosting a race, it worked perfectly. Our challenge back then, obviously, was distance. We need to get the correct distances and make sure that it's feasible to be a national event. But we've been out there now, and we can definitely make it a national event. The terrain is so diverse, from trees to sand to pinning it to clay riverbeds. We've got it all, even though it's in a small area. We've got all the different terrains. So we're super excited to get there, and we hope that some of the local guys, I mean, that park has hundreds of people there every weekend, and we hope that they support their own sort of home riding area and come and enter.
Tell me how that's going to work as well, because we used to know it as the silver class back in the day. So for the guys that aren't nationally licensed, can they just pull in? And obviously, we're really desperate for the numbers on the nationals. So, how do we get those guys in? Where do they fit into the show?
So we definitely will host a wild class setup. We will obviously bulletin the regs around that because of COVID. There's a lot of pre-registration information that needs to be done. So they will still need to hold a day license with MSA, go through all the COVID-19 regulations. But, it's not going to cost them an arm and a leg to enter this event and race. So we're still trying to structure that. But we'll definitely get that out to Rhino Park and the guys that go there every weekend to notify them of how they can enter and be involved on the day.
And the junior situation, I've had a couple of dads saying, what size, what age can they actually compete at the nationals? I said, well, Carl's going to actually answer all those queries for us today. So I think it's been quite a success. You've had small or modest numbers coming in from the juniors, but the idea was to try and get more of the junior categories out to these main senior events.
Definitely. I mean, the long-term goal is to go back to a junior national championship. Obviously, in the interim, we needed to try something to build the numbers and see if it was going to work. In Lesotho, we had pleasant numbers on both days, enough to make it worth a race and a class. So in Lesotho, we ran an 85cc and a 65cc class. We will most likely do the same at Rhino Park, depending on numbers. Obviously, if there's one 65cc rider, we will probably then amalgamate it and make it one junior class. But we'll have to see when the numbers come in. But yeah, again, to the juniors, I mean, we need them to enter, even though it's not a national championship at the moment. We need them to enter and be there in order for us to make it a national championship in the future.
Yeah, I know it's tricky. It's egg, chicken, egg. We need the numbers so that we can actually put on an event. The moms and dads will no doubt want a follow-up to that. So let's try and answer that right now. Are the kids going out on the main course? Obviously, I know the answer to this, but let's just answer that for the moms and dads.
Yeah, so at Rhino Park, our setup will be, in the morning will be a time trial for the national classes only. after they are done, we will send the juniors out for a lap-based race, and that will be on the time trial route, so not the full route. And obviously, we will make it, acceptable for a 65cc rider.
I'm just checking your notes here, by the way. My eyes went down there, Carl. Sorry, I just want to jump in.
Problem. That'll
so
be
the prologue loop is a 14-kilometer loop. That'll be what the juniors will race.
Yes, correct. It'll be, it's actually 21 kilometers at Rhino Park.
Okay.
But the junior track at GC, I think, is 14 kilometers long. But at Rhino Park, the time trial loop is 21 Ks.
Right, understood. All right, and then as far as the procedures, let's get into the nitty-gritty here. Let's start with how many people per rider can follow on here. I mean, it's been written down a million times, but let's just say the words.
Okay, so we are classified as an endurance event. At an endurance event, you are allowed the rider plus 5 pit crew or personnel mechanic. Okay, so obviously that's the ruling. We, like I said to you before this, we need to make sure that we don't have unnecessary people coming to the race, because if we have 200 entries, it becomes a considerable amount of people. Mm-hmm. But that is the ruling. That is, if you want to come with 5 people as a rider, you may.
Right. And then it's going to be all about the social distancing, all those words we've got used to. But now we can say social distancing when we're going to the garage to buy milk, but social distancing in a race is going to be slightly different. And what we're talking about here is not on the track. Social distancing in this circumstance refers to the pit area.
Definitely. So there will be COVID compliance people walking around. And people need to note that, it is a sanctioned event and there is strict ruling. You need to wear your masks, you need to sanitize, you need to keep social distancing. Don't gather in little groups without masks or anything on. And just be mindful that it is a sanctioned event and we need to follow all those rulings the whole day.
I mean, Carl, I went out to one of the national car events, which obviously don't have the same numbers as we do. They only had 25 cars. So it was very sparse in the pits and it was actually easy to manage. But that same weekend, I know you went out to check out what was going on at the Inland Motocross, and they had huge numbers. And did you learn a lot from actually going and checking that out?
No, definitely. I mean, me personally, on the day at the National, I won't be obviously too involved in the COVID compliance. Obviously, I will where I see things not fitting. But, we did learn a lot from that. The big thing is, people are accustomed to going into other pits and chatting and sitting around, and we can't do that. We need to stay in your pit area. If you go to the rider at the start, it needs to be controlled. Everyone can't gather around them. At the Inland Motocross, it was one person or one mechanic could accompany the rider to the start line, and that's how it's going to be. It's not, we can't have the big gathering of people going around talking to all the riders, and it can't be like that. It needs to be one guy going with a rider to the start line.
Chatting to the rest of the riders, I mean, obviously what we've been doing during lockdown, keeping ourselves out of trouble, but a lot of people now are obviously getting themselves ready to go racing, and I must say I'm a little bit nervous. It's like starting the season afresh, and you and I have been around long enough to say there's a lot of injuries that come out very early in the season because everyone gets on their bike after the Christmas holidays and reckons they can just pin it, and you often see a lot of injuries and stuff. So that is obviously something that we want to try and avoid. So we're really trying to keep people calm, even though we're heading back into a championship. It's a championship with a 5-month gap. So we're trying to keep people a little bit calm. I know you're going to lay out a safe track. I know all the rest of the organizations will lay out a safe track, but safety and the hospital question has come up frequently over the last month. Yeah. So let's try and attack that one now. Yeah.
So look, I mean, obviously Rhino, if I look at Rhino Park in as an event by itself. The track's in very close proximity, so the furthest part from the pits is, as the crow flies, maybe a K or two. So from that perspective, it's obviously really good to get to a good rider. And then the hospital question, Rhino Park is central to Pretoria, Johannesburg, Witbank, Benoni, the South. It's a really central venue. So from that perspective, it was another decision when we were discussing at commission level that, it's better to switch it out with KZN that's a bit more remote to when, later in the year when hopefully things are a bit more clear. So GXCC, like they've done at their event on the 5th of September, they'll be running the national. So they will have the same procedures and the medics in place to, if a rider does get injured, they won't be turned away. They won't have to get tested before they get treated. And, the same rules will apply. There will be hospitals, doctors that will be notified of the event. And it'll be, the same as if it wasn't with COVID. In fact, it might be better because it's a lot more organized from a medical front.
Yeah. And, I'm not saying anything that's not out there already. We can see the numbers are dropping off, if they are to be believed, but hopefully they are. We're starting to see a decline in people in the hospitals and things like that. So this is obviously one of the reasons we're allowed to actually reignite the racing situation. So that's good news for us. What's the feedback that you've been getting from your more nationally spread riders? Because obviously KZN are going to be traveling up en masse to come racing. We've got one or two guys a little bit further down the coast. Some guys that are more local, but some of the soft borders like Limpopo. But unfortunately, obviously, the national border crossing guys, and I'm talking specifically about like Botswana, we've lost one or two guys, unfortunately, because of the situation, haven't we?
Yeah, look, that situation is out of our hands. Interprovincial was always maybe, now that it's allowed anyway, but before it was we could get permits and things, but national borders are not going to happen with a permit or not. No one is coming in and out. So that was always kind of something that we knew we'd have to sacrifice, and it's unfortunate to those guys that have been so common at these events that they're going to miss out. But unfortunately, we had to compromise somewhere. Yeah.
No. Like you say, it was totally out of your hands. It's just, I think those guys, and I have been on comms with a few of them, and they're basically turning their attention back to their local regional situation. Until those doors open officially, which looks like it might only be next year, then it's just going to be, we're a little bit landlocked. But the cool thing is, in the last month and a half, Carl, you and I, you've got to admit that the vibe is coming back. It's a strange environment. From my point of view, I can say it felt slightly sterile because you can't do everything that you want to at the events, and all you're going to see is that for the next foreseeable, But it's a small price to pay to be able to keep going, and there's an economic knock on here as well. A lot of the guys that we know are not necessarily paid athletes, but they rely heavily on their sponsorship, and that it's been a big question mark coming into this next phase. Were the sponsors still going to be picking up the tabs? And for the most part, the guys I've spoken to, the sponsors have really been super supportive. In fact, imagine like someone like Henderson. He hasn't had to give away as many tires this year,
He's probably in the positive.
But it is good. It is good that everyone gets to come back. And, from my side, from the media, we're going to be working extremely hard to make sure that everyone can still achieve the exposure that they need as a pro or a semi-pro rider.
Yeah, look, the feedback that I've had chatting to the guys, as always, a lot of the sponsors have committed for the year, and there's a few of them, unfortunately, that didn't make it through this. But the ones that did will most likely honor their contracts to the end of the year. I think the real challenge will come in from next year. And I think we're going to see a lot of this economic sort of hit only sort of coming in the first quarter 2021, which will be something we'll have to address at that time. But I think for the most part this year, we'll carry on as normal. I think the guys are eager to get back to racing. And I think a lot of people who didn't race or ride as much as they would have liked to pre-lockdown are now realizing, how important that is and how good it is to get out and go be on a motorbike and go race. And we're going to see a lot of them coming back.
Yeah. I mean, just a quick nod to the industry, fair play to all the guys from, all the manufacturers and importers getting their 2021 bikes in and actually, well, they're pumping
Correct.
already. I'm speaking to a couple of the dealers. You can't move for 2021 bikes. And, that always makes me feel good about the industry. If people are buying bikes, people are racing bikes.
Yeah, definitely. So the fact that they're doing well is definitely a good indication that there's still, energy and vibe in the sport at this moment. So that's good news for us. I think we're going to have a successful rest of the season, both regionally and nationally. And let's hope we can build to where we want it to be in 2021.
I saw Ivan actually threw up some great shots there of prize giving, and I think he was doing it to remind me. So thanks for that, Ivan. This has obviously been noted in the GXCCs. They've put their regs out. There will be no prize giving at the GXCCs. Yeah. We can't hand out trophies. So the guys need to realize that at the end of their races, it's going to be load up and leave. Please, thank you very much, and be safe. That's kind of going to be the tagline. It does feel odd. I've been at events already where the race ends and it ends with nothing. It feels odd.
Yeah.
But it will come back. It's just these were the stipulations from Motorsport South Africa, that they worked tirelessly with local government to make sure that we had to get rid of those gatherings, and it was the prize givings and the riders briefings. So maybe
Correct.
From a national point of view, you want to kind of like pick up the pieces here and just tell us what's happening your side.
So I think obviously the first thing to note about this is everyone needs to make sure that they read the documentation and they have everything in order pre-event. You can't come to the race unorganized, because it's just going to be a hard day for you. You're either going to be turned away or you're not going to know what's going on. It's not going to be a pleasant time. So that's the first thing. And then in terms of gatherings at national level, we will do a briefing online. It'll be distributed to everyone. And then just before the race, we will obviously signal, depending, we will do a little update. As you know, Matt, sometimes things change on the day. There's a course change, there's some cows in the bottom field, so we need to update those at the time of the race, which we will do. And then after the race, like you said, we can't gather around and hang around. It's load your bike, pack up your pits, and go home. Prize giving and certificates or trophies, whatever the case may be, will either be posted to you or sent to you via email. But there'll definitely, at this point, be no prize givings or any gathering after the race.
What there will be, though, and we need to hasten and add this very quickly, is the media within the motorsport world are going to be working tirelessly to make sure that information is out there, disseminated, and obviously, everyone's trying to understand this new world. I love watching the AMA Supercross, and I've taken a lot of my lead from what they did this year to get their championship dialed in. You saw a lot of double up and triple up events. Everything was online. You couldn't move on social media for people doing updates. Yeah. And I think that's been a really strong reaction. And if anything, from a media point of view and sponsorship and awareness, that's what's going to keep us going for the rest of this year. So from my side, I'm making sure that coverage is handled as much as possible at all of these events. And I know I'm going to be probably working with you guys as well throughout the year just to make sure that we do get it out there. But the one thing that people do ask is prize giving often gives that little time buffer to go through any of the protest scenarios. And I know that this has actually been spoken about. So maybe if you can just reiterate that.
Yeah, so Deanne from KZN, she's obviously said, WhatsApp, we're fortunate that everyone's got a platform that majority of people use. So all sort of communications and results and was posted on a group in WhatsApp, which works quite nicely. I know Inland MX did that as well. And in terms of protesting, we'll obviously have to give a longer time because of the community. Some people might not check their phone in 30 minutes. So as far as I understand, it'll be 24 hours to get a formal protest in. And then all communication after that will be posted on the group or the various channels. And then final results will be posted after that.
Yeah, I like that. And at the event that I worked 2 weeks ago for the cars, they ran on the Telegram, which is similar to WhatsApp. They ran on the Telegram platform, which is great because then it's not a two-way communication. It's bulletin style.
It's just one.
They actually ran a virtual notice board. They referred to it as, which was brilliant because it was just comms coming out the whole time and feeding people information that it stopped people having to go up to the race control area. It stopped a lot of the foot traffic and obviously people crossing physical paths. So yeah, we've suddenly gone into the matrix. It's fully digital all of a sudden.
Look, it's very cool, Matt. I think, prove it or not, I think it's a good way of getting information fast to the riders.
Agreed.
People can't say they didn't have a chance to look at it or they didn't know where the notice board was. It comes to your phone. So it's up to you to read it or look at it. I think going forward, even when COVID is left us, I think it's a good way to carry on informing people and getting information to them on the spot.
Well, it certainly speeds up the paperless push at the moment because normally I'd be walking around with a file jammed by the end of a race weekend. Now I had just a phone folder full. It was brilliant.
Much easier.
I did enjoy the process. It's just the obvious things. Let's end off with the obviousness. Social distancing, face masks and hand sanitizers. I mean, at the events that I've been to so far, you cannot move without bumping into a hand sanitizer. They are everywhere. There's no excuse for it at all. Food and drink is something that's been spoken about at a few of the events. At the one event that I went to, there was zero. It was zero. Whatever you bring, you bring. There's nothing to buy, nothing to purchase. And again, these are the processes we're going to have to just kind of panel beat and work our way through.
Yeah, so at Rhino Park, they've got a full operational restaurant. So they are licensed normally to trade. So they will be selling food and soft drinks and things on the day. In terms of other vendors, there won't be at Rhino Park. And we will obviously notify the guys accordingly what that situation will be down in KZN at the doubleheader.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a lot of good information, Carl. I mean, how are you finding the process so far? I think everyone is just doing whatever they can to make it work. It's definitely a play forward scenario.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as I said, people need to understand that it's strange times and we have to do all these protocols to make us go racing. But I think once the people, and like the events have happened, they say, yes, it's a mission, but it was just so good to be out racing again. And I think that's the vibe that everyone's sort of giving. They want to go racing, they want to be there, and they know that it will end and it will get back to the way we know it.
I'll end on a lighter note before I actually wrap up shop here. What's been happening with you and the boys? Because I think they've been racing. I think one of the lads said they were riding from like lockdown 1. They've definitely been turning the laps. Put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. Look, across the board, the guys have been riding a lot, and the whole team. The guys that are fortunate enough to live near open areas or that can get sort of somewhere close by, they've been training since the early levels of lockdown. But now they're all riding as much as they can, right from the juniors up to the top. So, yeah, we're really excited to see how they go. It's a bit of, when you haven't raced for a while, there's always that uncertainty. Am I fit enough? Have I ridden enough? But I think first lap in, they'll realize that all's good and they're ready to go.
You know what everyone's forgotten how to do, though, is to, especially on the senior side, to race for 3 hours. Like, that's going to be tough. I mean, I think I'm going to have to do some light stretching just to hold a microphone for that long, you know? So
yeah, no, look, I think, and you know, we're coming into some races that are definitely, you know, KZN is always challenging, and the Rhino Park track is also nice and tight and got a mixed terrain. So the guys that haven't been training, I hope they start training now, getting prepared.
Exactly right. Carl, that's great information. Thank you for joining us. I think we got through a hell of a lot of stuff. We're never going to be able to answer every question, but as we've gone through the last couple of weeks to a month, there's more and more information coming out. And every event that we attend, we tend to learn a little bit more. So I think the processes are good. For me, these next couple of weeks are going to be very important as we go through GXCC and into the nationals. We're going to be able to find out who is still on the gate. We're obviously fingers crossed that everyone can make it out, but we do accept the fact that this situation has caused a lot of problems, personally and economically. So it'd be nice to see a couple of friendly faces, but you know, from the sidelines here and behind the scenes, we're all working and pushing just to reignite this world of racing for us, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely, Matt. So let's see. I think a lot of people will come out. Like I said just now, I think a lot of people, you know, put everything into racing, so they want to carry on, and they'll sort of use their last pennies, whether they shouldn't or not. But you know, I think we're going to see the numbers, and we will get through this, and motorsport will continue to boom.
Carl, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. If we can do anything for you, you know where I am, and I will be seeing you over the next couple of weeks anyway. So, but thank you to you and Ian Pepper and everyone that's been pushing from behind the scenes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I also just want to say to Ian, you know, to Peps and Plastics, thank you to them. They've put in so much, especially at Rhino Park and the next nationals. They've put in a lot of money, and honestly, without them, it wouldn't be happening. So thank you very much to them, and to you guys again. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for everything you're doing and
always
keeping everyone up to speed on the media side.
Cool, man. Anytime. All right, we'll be seeing Kyle out at the races, and once again echoing his thanks to Ian Pepper and everyone that's really putting in the work behind the scenes. We're going to carry on with our live on lockdown format as we get ourselves ready for our next guest. And he couldn't have timed it better to come onto the show. So Dion van der Merwe getting picked up by the CIT Husqvarna racing squad at the end of last season after, I think, only a season of racing. So it's going to be a very interesting one. Tune in next week as we talk about one of the guys that has come out of absolutely nowhere to challenge for wins. We'll also get ready to go racing with the GXCC crew. Make sure you get those entries in as quick as possible, guys. We race once again on the 5th of September.